This week we get very practical and we take all that theory and put it into practice, and we look at story structures, and these are actual structures that you can use to build stories of your own. And so our objectives are, how can stories be mapped? And think in terms of the story arc and other forms of mapping to get the overall flow of the story that you want. And how do these reflect why stories work? And then you're going to also take a look at some of the tools that you will be using starting next week to actually build a digital story, such as story tables. So let's move down here a little bit. You'll be reading two things by me. Yes, this week's all about me. One is the storytelling chapter extracted from the Leonardo book, and part two of digital storytelling in the classroom, in which I introduce the story core, story mapping, story tables, and so on. And I also give you a number of other resources that have to do with story structures. Joseph Campbell, of course, is a huge name in that regard. His hero's journey, coming from the book The Hero with a Thousand Faces, is a classic approach to explaining how a story works. And what he did was look at a number of myths and stories from a number of different cultures over a number of different ages. And what he determined was that there was a basic overall flow to plot and structure when it came to story. And I give you a number of places that you can go to read more about that. Down here, the Star Wars origin, the mythology and you visit the mythology teacher to see that. And then for some criticism of Joseph Campbell, which is always a good thing, we look at the heroine's journey. Also, in part two of my book, scattered throughout are references to Campbell's work and how I sort of synthesize those. And then some other things that I think you might find interesting. You have a quick look at the structure used by Dan Harmon to create the TV show called Community. And he's got 8 steps he follows every time. Please notice that he's always looking at the end at how to portray how people have changed. It is so much all about transformation. Lisa Crone, very well known for her book on story called Wired for Story, says there's 4 basic steps. Someone's the protagonist, you have a story question that sort of drives you, and how he or she changes. And that is what the story itself is actually all about. Notice again, change. We look for characters who change. Do treat yourself. Watch Kurt Vonnegut's, it's on YouTube, his video about story structure. It's not only enlightening, it's really funny. McKee's Essential Elements of Story Design. Here they are in sort of bullet format. And I also feature in my book McKee's, what I call McKee's Zigzag. And he shows how story sort of flows and keeps our engagement. And then a whole lot of other resources that I think you might find really interesting. Pixar's 22 Rules to Phenomenal Storytelling makes a great screenplay. The work of Labos and Woletsky, and so on. Anyway, there you go.